Hi, everyone. Very happy to be here. My name is Chloe Lula. I work for Resident Advisor, and I'm excited to be moderating this interview. So, can you start off by introducing yourself and what you do in the music industry and how you got started?
Okay, I hope I'm audible. Have to admit, I'm quite nervous. This is the first time I'm addressing a crowd, so please be soft. My name is Asmi. Yeah. And I'm originally from India, and I've been living in Berlin now for 4 years. Um, I currently work as a deputy editor at Inverted Audio, and I need my notes so much because I'm so nervous. Okay. Yeah, and I started there as a writer a year and a half ago, and just since recently joined in as a deputy editor as well, and it's been going good. I host a radio show as well with Refuge Worldwide. It's called Spice Tape, and at the moment I have a Substack. I work with digital marketing. I mean, you know, the music scene in Berlin, we have a couple of slashes in our names. So yeah, that's how it's going. Although in Berlin that it's been about a year and a half too of being active with music, my journey started quite long ago, almost a decade, because back home in India, I was part of the music scene as well. I started off working with Red Bull and Red Bull Music when I was really young. That opened up my life, I think, and eventually did a lot of like events and event marketing and artist management for some of India's best like venues and labels, etc. So yeah, been in the scene for a while.
Multi-hyphenate. What is your Substack about?
Oh, yeah, it's called Morphin. And it actually, surprisingly, has taken a very different turn than I would expect, because I think I've been writing a lot more about acoustic music, like mostly jazz. And I think the focus was more for me to write about music from Asia and Middle East more than, yeah, and I think it keeps a balance because Inverted Audio is really underground focused and like niche electronics, but Morphin gives me a space also to balance out like smaller artists that I've known and grown up with, grown up around back home, and yeah, it's a interesting. I love how it's growing, to be honest.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I think Substack's like the future actually of journalism. How did you get to your current role, and is there a connection between your qualifications and how you got to where you are?
I would say, I think. Personally, I think there's no need to have a degree or so in the same field, but I definitely do. I have a double degree in media studies. I did my bachelor's in journalism and PR as well as my master's. So I do have it, but I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's quite important, though. Yeah.
What were your thoughts? Sorry, I skipped ahead. What are the main responsibilities of your role, and what does a typical day look like for you?
Well, I think when I started off as a writer, I mean, it was also more learning how to do it on the go, because I used to write before, but not for music, and I did music events, so I was trying to club both of my passions and see how it goes. I think a lot of writing reviews and artist interviews, features, etc., came a lot with research and observation and understanding the artist, what they're trying to communicate, and what are you trying to communicate about them. So I think it's a lot of observation research as a writer, and then of course like drafting and editing and rewriting it until you're fine. I still think I take quite some time in making a piece perfect, because I think I have the time for it, and I'm trying to like figure out what my style is. But apart from that, now as a deputy editor, so I feel like there's a lot of like organization, planning, ideation, and like fixing your calendars, following up, collaborations with like distributors, labels, PR agencies, like trying to sort that out into a calendar. Yeah, that's pretty much, yeah.
How do you balance your full-time job with all of your other extracurriculars like your Substack?
I mean, to be honest, I'm a workaholic. I wouldn't want to admit, but it is true. I think previous speaker also mentioned that she likes to Sianza, right, from Radio 80,000, if I said it right. She, all right, okay. And she's like, yeah, she said that she likes to do multiple things all the time, and I think it's pretty much the same. I do work like from 9 or so in the morning until late because I anyway have insomnia. That's the truth. So I stay up and I do a lot of work. It's hard, I would say, but I think the passion, right? Like it's so rewarding, and I think that's why we've all always like been here, because no matter what, we just want to keep going.
What were your thoughts on the music industry at 18?
To be honest, I didn't have thoughts about music industry in 18 because in India it was different, and the electronic music scene especially was very small, but also a very interesting one. I think at 19 I knew what the industry felt like because of Red Bull and Red Bull music, and yeah, like it opened up such a new world, and also the fact that it was so small and growing, and it felt like a revolution, and it still feels like a revolution. I feel like I enjoy partying in India, like in Bangalore, Goa, so much more nowadays than partying here because it's already established, but there it's like, it's ripe. People are just getting still into the scene, and it feels so alive, like we have a purpose. And I think that was also a reason that I came to Berlin eventually, yeah.
Please give us an outline of roles that exist within your area of the industry.
There's the editor, the deputy editor, writers, contributing writers, persons who handle premieres, partnerships, collaborations, and content managers to an extent, I guess. I mean, at the moment, Inverted Audio is a small magazine, so a lot of it we collaboratively do. We take on different roles when we need to because we are all trying to push it ahead. But yeah, in my space at least, I would say it's these, if it makes sense.
I'm also curious for people who aren't able to secure like a full-time position in music journalism, because I think they're fairly hard to come by. What are some other opportunities?
I think I missed that point actually because earlier when I started writing, I also did start as a contributing freelance writer, and it was interesting to me, I think, because also maybe I took some time, maybe I also did it a little bit strategically, but if the work means something to the artist or the record label, I've noticed that they also try to reach out and keep in touch with you so you can write more stuff, and that has somehow grown to now exactly with the Substack that I get requests from labels to cover their stuff, or writing artist bios, writing PR for other labels, other distributors, and so on. Freelance writing is quite big, right? And I would say. Mm-hmm.
And this, sorry, I'm going off script a little bit, but
it's okay.
Say someone wants to start out as a freelancer, how would you suggest that they get their foot in the door if they don't have the existing contacts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally didn't have contacts when I started because I just started shooting emails everywhere. One day I just sat down and I was like, I'm going to write a piece of review or about an artist. It's Hiroshima Yoshimura. He's a Japanese ambient specialist, and I was really moved by. I listened to his entire discography and I was like, I really have to write about this guy. I don't know who's going to publish it, or I don't know if I want it to be published, but I wrote like a 2-page essay, and then I just started shooting emails to every email I could find, and one of them read it. And then they published it. So then it began. Like they just asked if I wanted to write more. I was like, yeah, let's go. Yeah.
So there's a lot of pre-work involved.
There is. And also, I mean, I think another opening for me was also the radio show that I do at Refuge. It was one of the first things that I took up because I wrote I write. So I wrote a 2-page essay, a pitch to Richard, and I told him what I wanted to do with the radio show because I don't DJ or so, but I wanted to host and invite artists from South Asia, especially, and Middle East. Now it's like growing. So people who are not in Berlin and people who have experienced in that part of the hemisphere. So I invite them and they have these shows, and I think that kind of gave me an idea on like how to pitch, basically, that you have to be quite descriptive and elaborative of what you want and what you're trying to express, and give them a little bit of an insight as well, like an example or so they know what they're getting into. And also, like, if you have a piece written, just send it across.
So your show is also an interview show?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
it's sometimes when I'm comfortable on speaking on air, I can get really nervous. But yeah, I try to. I want to. It's been a year and a half, and I think about 10 shows so far. I'm trying to slowly take it ahead to that point where I can grow in that. Yeah.
What skill set is most important for your area of the industry?
I would say, like, for me, I felt while there are like, it's a little bit of a switch from hard skills and soft skills, because generally I think hard skills are usually like really knowing your tools and this, that, but I think with arts it's more networking and like having a sense of direction, like consistency, resilience. These soft skills actually play harder. Because it keeps you motivated to like do what you want to do, and at the same time, like I would put creative writing and like journalistic writing and this kind of stuff as soft skills, because it comes with practice and comes with identifying and reading through a lot of other writers and so, and seeing what they are doing, what is their style, and how can you develop a style like that. Yeah.
I guess time management is also probably important.
Yeah. It's quite important. Yeah.
If someone is excited about following your career path, what next steps would you advise them to take?
To start, like absolutely start somewhere. I mean, I think now we sort of live in a space where we can have. I was just literally talking to Amy about it, like Substack. Instagram, we were discussing quite deeply Rascal reviews. If you haven't found the page on Instagram, it's lit, for the lack of a better word. So yeah, I mean, I think just to begin somewhere, right? And that's really important, I feel. And output and consistency. Sometimes, especially if you're like a perfectionist or so, sometimes you're not always happy with what you write, but you just got to keep doing it and improvise as you go. But I think like having like a output, I at least try to write something once a week, and I've been doing that religiously for like 2 years now, and maybe that's why like it's just working. I don't know, but yeah, consistency for sure. Pitch ideas whenever you get time. Yeah, just foot in the door, trying everywhere still.
Also, I'll briefly add to that
Yes,
that there are some newsletters out there, like Study Hall, other opportunities for freelance journalism if you're actually really interested in doing that. What have you found to be the biggest surprise about working in the music industry?
That it's a real job. Like, it's really difficult. It's not easy. And most of us also have to do multiple other things to keep going, at least until you get to a point. And I think that's the reason why we're having this today, that it does not become that difficult, right? That we have more and more avenues where we can continue to create, and maybe that becomes the sole focus instead of separating it with multiple interests. Yeah.
I mean, my follow-up question for you,
Yeah.
Since you juggle so many different things, what do you see as, do you aspire to just be like fully just a journalist?
Mm-hmm. I would say I'm still figuring it out. And for me, I think initially when I joined, and the reason that it took so long to actually start being like a journalist with music is I was always anxious and worried that journalism is a dying art, especially with music. And we are seeing how it goes at the moment. But I think now I've realized that it will actually adapt and try to find its own ways of sustaining itself, and you can still be a part of it. So I'm very interested. I think I would continue to grow in that space and see if I can be a writer. I would be happy to be a writer at some point where I can work freelance for a long term and have enough influx of profits.
What are your top 3 tips for somebody who wants to follow on your career path?
For me, I mean, it was always about purpose and intent. Like, why am I doing what I'm doing? And I feel like it's super important for people in the arts, because it's such a it's a giving profession. You're doing for the others more than you're doing for yourself. And for me, it was a lot about, like, when I started out, it was about I want to provide a space for people who have given me so much. Like, I've enjoyed their music so much that I want to communicate about it, get more people to listen to it. And the idea came in. But once I moved abroad, now it's more like I want to shed some light onto the scene back home and all these other spaces. So it keeps developing this purpose. And I think it's important to find this purpose, and it's important to find your style, because when you have your own style and you have your own, like, sort of like a brand identity, I think it really speaks volumes to a lot of people. And it feels really rewarding when people come back to you and they say, like, oh, like, I like the way you write. Would you also like to, what's your thoughts on this? It's so satisfying. So yeah, definitely, like, personal style, understand what you want and why you're doing what you want, see the gaps that you want to fill in the space, like the question we asked earlier, like, how can we be more journalistic, talk about music and music politically, which is fluctuating a little bit, so how can we contribute to the larger scene, I guess. And also to be clear-headed, focus. It's very easy to get lost, and I think we've all gotten lost a few times. So you're just trying to stay, clean sometimes.
No, I think what you said, though, about identifying a gap in something that you can provide that's not being provided elsewhere is really an important point.
Yeah, I think so too, yeah.
I think we have time for questions now.
Yeah, but also I think Chloe can also give us a bit more insight, because I only told her when we were talking, I was like, you should also talk, because, you know.
No, but I'm interviewing you.
All right.
Any other questions? Music journalism, working in media.
Hi, and thank you so much. And actually, I'm wondering that, like, how did you find out that your style, and how did you convince that, and you said to yourself, that's my style of writing?
Interesting question. I mean, I generally read a lot, and I read a lot that is not music focused. And there was always a little bit of I'm a dreamy person. It came a lot from my own personality and how I wanted to bring that into music. Like, I'm dreamy. I like fiction, magical realism, and I try to, like, drive all of those into writing a journalistic review about music. So sometimes it starts with I have, like, a way I want to go about it. It starts with a very descriptive, sort of fiction-oriented opening, and then it goes on to more about the artist and more about the album. And yeah, I try to not deviate too much into someone else's taste of writing, I guess. Yeah, I think it's all trial and error. You know, you write a few pieces, you contribute, like, then you have, you personally like something a bit more, and you try to develop on that. Does it help? I don't know. Yeah.
Going back a bit to talking about my experience in my country, I come from Bogota, Colombia, and during a lot of years I noticed that there was, like, this huge connection between music journalism and the music scene in general, in Bogota mostly. And I noticed that many of the people involved that had a lot of platform, like big influencers and people that worked in media, involved a lot of their personal relationships with musicians in the moment that they were covering certain spaces, events, artists. How do you think you come to terms with that? Because I do think that being a music journalism is also reaching out to go to the events you like and the artists that resonate more with you.
Yeah. I know it's a really tough one, which is why I'm trying to figure out how I want to go about it. Because I think I literally had a conversation with somebody else just when I came in that sometimes if you're covering, it's not that I feel like every kind of music has its own audience, so it has nothing to do with what is good or bad or something like that. But it's just about personal preference, I guess. And when you write about something that you don't personally feel so connected with, it does feel like you're ripping a part of your soul, especially if you really care about what you're writing about. But it's part of the game, I guess, and it just makes you like the pieces that you really care about a lot more, and then tries to push you through that area of how can you write more about the stuff you. And that's another reason why I have like multiple slashes, right? So then I'm not focusing on just one area, and then I can pick and choose on what I want, and it's not really disrupting my finances or things like that, and just keeping a balance altogether. Yeah.
I guess I would also just add from my experience that I think in music journalism there are, because it's such a small community, there are people know each other, and you have to be really realistic and like objective about whether or not there's a conflict of interest and whether or not that's going to affect the piece that you're writing, and in that, you know, knowing when to maybe remove yourself from whatever that is. And I know at RA we have done that before when we felt that there's too much of a conflict of interest for a journalist to be covering an event or an artist. Yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you for the talk. And I have a question. How do you prevent yourself from journalistic burnout? Or maybe both of you, because you both do music journalism.
Yeah.
From my experience, I've experienced it several times, and each time it was very difficult to come back to what you do. But I think it's never possible to quit music journalism, so even if it takes a few years, you will definitely come back. What's your take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I did function with a lot of breaks, just working in the music industry for sure, because there is a lot of burnout like involved there. And secondly, like when the topics are more personal to you, then it's sometimes very hard to keep subjective opinions away. And but that's also the reason that, like I said earlier, that I keep a break out of it. But I also am curious to know what Chloe feels about it.
I mean, I'm really passionate about what I do, so I've never really felt burnt out by it. But I have to say that I spent a long time as a writer, and I've since moved more into like the broadcast journalism space. And I think just changing to a new format has felt really refreshing to me. And so like still pursuing journalism, but like in a different way. So right now I'm just interviewing people for the RA Exchange, the podcast, which is. I mean, it's a very different art form than writing an article. So I think that you can also, like, if you're feeling burnt out with writing, maybe like thinking about engaging with it in through a different avenue.
Yeah, because I think even I function similarly. I strictly revolve around writing album reviews, festival reviews, artist interviews, and that keeps it a bit light when it gets too intense. So you just balance out the projects you take and see how you can manage between these projects so you don't feel the weight of each one of them. Some of them are light, some of them are like, difficult, and then you have your time management. It comes down to that. Yeah. Okay. I hope it helps. Hi.
Actually, thank you, Asmi. Sorry, Chloe, I'm going to throw you under the bus. So Chloe produces some of my favourite content on RA, which is the RA Exchange. If you're not familiar with it, Chloe can tell you what it is, but I'm just interested, what was your career path to get to that point?
Okay, yeah, so the RA Exchange is our long-form interview series. Once a week, it's an episode. Sorry, I feel like the mic keeps coming in and out. Yeah. And we recently introduced video to those as well, so they're like multimedia format. My career path, I actually started out doing, I was part of a radio station when I was in college, university, and I was producing shows on the radio and was like really passionate about it. So talk shows and music shows. And I also studied writing. I got my master's in journalism. And I was mostly focused on writing up until a couple years ago, and I got really involved with Refuge Worldwide, and which like reignited my passion for radio. And there was an opening at RA when our previous podcast editor left, and so I thought that I would give that a shot. And I found that broadcast journalism really resonates deeply with me. Like I just have like a very strong affinity for radio and broadcast journalism. I think it's a really evocative way to tell stories, and yeah, so I have had like a little bit of a meandering path, but it's basically been through radio, I guess, radio and writing. Yeah.
That you've done to date? You were in Moby's house last week. Am I allowed to tell anyone that?
Actually, I think that is my favorite exchange that I've done. I interviewed Moby. That exchange is live. It went out last week. It was just like very serendipitous, not even serendipitous. It was just kind of like, it was just a shot in the dark. I got one of these like mass PR emails being like, Moby released a single, and I just answered it, and I was like, does Moby want to come on the R Exchange? And they answered and said yes. So I ended up, when I was in LA, I went to his house and interviewed him. So also just goes to show that you can, you know, I think you can email pretty much anybody you want to interview, and most people are open to talking, actually. That's been my experience. So that's probably my favorite interview.
Does anyone have any more questions? Otherwise, it'll be me going back to back with Chloe. Can we pass that one
over? This is maybe a more direct question, but I don't know. I've been following a few Substacks. I don't know if you've heard of First Floor. So I really feel like the audience in that sense is very niche. I don't know how many readers they're drawing in general. How do you sustain as a business model when you're upscaling and when you're thinking of how you're going to maintain this in terms of being self-sustaining financially? How do you maintain a decent living? I mean, it sounds like a yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, first of all, with First Floor and Futurism Reinstated, I think Philip Sherburns, I mean, they're both like really, really established and really good writers, and they always have had a really strong reader base. And for them to, well, when you're starting out, I feel like you have to build your own audience, and that takes a lot of time, and that takes a lot of effort. You have to write consistently. You have to reach out to labels and musicians who you think would resonate with your writing, because that's what I do. And it's about building relationships with each of these labels. So inherently, you're collaboratively working with different labels, different artists, and then your own audience combines with their own audience, and there's more people. It's like marketing, right? Because you're trying to build your own brand. And I know in terms of like money, the basic monthly subscription rates are like pretty reasonable on Substack. And if people really like your, like if readers really like your Substack, I know that they can register with you. But again, I think the interest can dip in and out, so you're going to lose a lot of writers, and you're going to gain a lot of, readers, and you're going to gain a lot of readers as it progresses. Yeah, but I really just think like it's about like it's trying, and I don't think it's easy. Substack is definitely not easy, but it's just about like output and how you go about it. It's literally like marketing. Yeah.
Can I follow up?
Yeah.
What's your take on being paid to feature? Depending on subscription.
I mean, to be honest, I would go for it because I think it's time that journalism came to that point where people appreciated and valued the time of writers who wrote so much, and that it's okay that you pay and get that information. But again, like earlier how Nikki mentioned, you pick and play, right? Like if it's something against your morals, you wouldn't go with it. But if it is, then you're okay to talk about it. And in the end, we have to understand that we want to sustain ourselves. It's about sustainability and how we can achieve it. So I think it's okay to help each other. We don't have to look at it as it's advertorial, that he's doing it for money. I think there can be good intention in what they're doing. Is that okay? Okay. All right. Cool.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.